The Arizona sun doesn't forgive. It beats down on the cracked asphalt of Prescott Elementary's parking lot with the kind of relentless intensity that turns metal door handles into branding irons and makes the air shimmer like something out of a fever dream. At 3:17 on a Tuesday afternoon in late August, the temperature hovers at 103 degrees and the black pavement radiates heat waves that distort everything they touch. Cody Brennan sits on the concrete curb near the flagpole, his small frame casting a shadow that seems to shrink with each passing hour. He's 7 years old, though he looks younger. Undersized for his age, with a mop of sandy brown hair that sticks to his forehead in sweaty clumps and blue palm that track each vehicle entering the parking lot with the desperate hope of a castaway watching the horizon for ships. His Spider-Man backpack rests against his legs. The fabric has faded from bright red to a dusty pink, worn thin at the corners from 2 years of daily use. Inside are a broken pencil, a crumpled worksheet about addition, half a granola bar wrapped in foil, and a water bottle that ran dry 6 hours ago. The final bell rang 14 minutes ago. Children poured from the double doors like water from a broken dam, their voices shrill with the particular excitement that only the end of a school day can bring. Cody watched them scatter to waiting SUVs and minivans, watched mothers embrace their kids with the casual affection of people who take such moments for granted, watched fathers ruffle hair and ask about homework and promise ice cream if they'd been good. He watched and he waited, because that's what his mother told him to do. Wait right there by the flag. Darla had said that morning, not quite meeting his eyes as she dropped him at the curb. Mommy might be a little late today, but you wait right there. Don't go anywhere. Don't talk to strangers. Just wait. So Cody waits. The parking lot empties in stages. First, the eager parents, the ones who arrive early and idle in the pickup lane with their windows down and their radios playing. Then the working parents rushing from jobs with harried expressions and apologetic waves. Then the stragglers, the forgotten permission slips and lost lunch boxes retrieved by sheepish adults. By 3:45, only 3 cars remain. A blue Honda that belongs to someone in the office, a white pickup truck that's been parked in the same spot since morning, and a silver Lexus in the teacher's lot, its chrome trim catching the afternoon sun like a mirror. Cody's stomach growls. He ate half his lunch at noon, saving the other half because experience has taught him that sometimes dinner doesn't happen. The remaining granola bar in his backpack calls to him, but something holds him back. Some instinct for self-preservation that children in unstable homes develop like a sixth sense. Save it. You might need it more later. He doesn't know how right he is. The silver Lexus chirps as its owner approaches. Bethany Winters teaches third grade 2 classrooms down from Cody's second grade room. She's 42 years old with highlighted blonde hair and designer sunglasses that probably cost more than Darla Brennan earns in a week. Her heels click against the pavement with the confident rhythm of someone who has never questioned whether she belongs somewhere. She passes within 10 feet of Cody. Her eyes flick toward him. A quick, reflexive glance the way you might notice a piece of litter on an otherwise clean sidewalk. Then her gaze slides away, and she keeps walking, keys jingling in her manicured hand. Cody doesn't call out, doesn't wave. He's learned that adults don't like being bothered by children who aren't theirs. His mother told him that. Don't be a pest, she always says. Nobody likes a pest. The Lexus pulls out of the lot, and Cody watches it disappear down Granite Street, and something in his chest feels like it's being squeezed by an invisible hand. That's okay. Mom will come. She's just running late. The minutes crawl past like wounded animals. 4 o'clock arrives, and with it comes Principal Kenneth Ashford, locking the school's front doors with the methodical precision of a man who has performed this ritual 1,000 times. He's tall and thin, with a receding hairline and a fondness for bow ties that he believes make him look distinguished. He built his career on discipline, zero tolerance for troublemakers, high test scores and polished floors, and parents who write generous checks to the PTA. Prescott Elementary runs like a well-oiled machine under his leadership, and Kenneth Ashford is proud of that. He walks past Cody without breaking stride. His leather briefcase swings at his side. His BMW sits in its reserved spot, black and gleaming, despite the desert dust that coats everything else. The engine purrs to life with the satisfied sound of German engineering, and Kenneth Ashford drives away already thinking about the gin and tonic waiting for him at home. He doesn't see the small boy on the curb, or rather he sees him but doesn't register him as his concern. The child is sitting calmly, not crying, not causing a disruption, not requiring intervention. Whatever situation exists there, it's not Kenneth Ashford's problem. He has protocols. If a child hasn't been picked up by 4:30, the office staff is supposed to make calls. But the office staff left at 4 o'clock, and Kenneth Ashford isn't about to wait around for some irresponsible parent to get their act together. The boy will be fine. Someone will come. By 4:30, the parking lot is empty except for Cody. The shadows have begun to lengthen the brutal afternoon sun, finally beginning its descent toward the western mountains. The heat eases from oppressive to merely uncomfortable. A breeze kicks up carrying the scent of sage and hot asphalt, and something else, something like loneliness, if loneliness had a smell. Cody's lips are dry, his throat aches. The water fountain near the gym is just around the corner of the building, and he knows from experience that it sometimes works even when the school is closed. But his mother said to wait by the flag. Don't go anywhere. So he stays. The first police cruiser of the evening rolls down Granite Street at 5:47, its tires humming against the warm pavement. Officer Paula Vickers is behind the wheel, fresh from the academy, with earnest eyes and a uniform that still holds its crisp creases. She drives this route twice daily, part of her assigned patrol zone that includes 3 schools and a shopping center. She notices the boy on the curb. Of course she notices him. He's the only spot of color in an otherwise empty lot, a small figure in a blue t-shirt sitting motionless beneath the American flag. But he's sitting calmly, not distressed, not waving for help, probably just waiting for a parent running late. Paula Vickers makes a mental note to circle back in an hour. If he's still there, she'll stop and check. But she has a domestic disturbance call across town, and the dispatcher's voice is getting impatient in her earpiece, and surely someone will come for the boy before she returns. The cruiser continues down Granite Street, and Cody watches it go with eyes that have stopped expecting anything different. Darkness comes to the Arizona desert with surprising speed. One moment the sky blazes with orange and pink and purple, a sunset so beautiful it belongs on a postcard. The next moment the light drains away like water down a sink, and the temperature drops 20 degrees in 30 minutes. Cody shivers in his thin t-shirt. The concrete curb that radiated unbearable heat just hours ago now feels cold against his legs. He pulls his knees to his chest and wraps his thin arms around them, trying to make himself small, trying to hold on to whatever warmth his body can generate. The parking lot lights flicker on, casting pools of orange-yellow illumination across the empty asphalt. Moths begin their suicidal dance around the bulbs. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks and another answers, and the night comes alive with sounds that seem much louder than they did during the day. This is when a 7-year-old boy should be eating dinner, taking a bath, watching cartoons while his mother does whatever mothers do in kitchens, getting tucked into bed with a kiss on the forehead and a promise that the monsters aren't real. Cody eats the granola bar at 8:15, chewing slowly to make it last. The chocolate chips have melted into the oats, creating a sticky mess that coats his fingers. He licks them clean because wasting food is a sin his mother drilled into him long ago. Then he waits. Around 9 o'clock, he finally abandons his post by the flagpole. Not to leave his mother said to wait, but to find somewhere safer for the night. He's done this before. Not often, but enough times that he knows the routine. The back of the school building has an alcove near the maintenance entrance, a recessed doorway that blocks the wind and hides him from the street. He discovered it last winter when his mother forgot him after a half day and didn't remember until the next morning. Cody uses his Spider-Man backpack as a pillow and curls into a ball on the cold concrete. His body shakes with shivers that have nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with fear. The darkness presses in from all sides, full of sounds he can't identify and shadows that might be anything. He doesn't cry. Crying doesn't help. He learned that a long time ago, maybe around the time his father left, or maybe around the time his mother started dating Derek. Tears don't bring anyone running. They just make his eyes hurt and his nose run. So Cody stares at the wall and listens to his own breathing and waits for morning. 15 miles outside of Prescott, in a roadside motel that rents rooms by the hour, Darla Brennan sits on a stained mattress and stares at her phone. The screen shows 6 missed calls from Prescott Elementary. 3 voicemails she hasn't bothered to listen to. The first call came at 4:32, less than 90 minutes after she was supposed to pick up her son. She knows what the messages say, knows what they're calling about, but the crystal meth burning in the glass pipe makes everything seem very far away and not very important. "Baby, you gotta relax," Derek says from the bathroom doorway. He's 34 years old with a shaved head and tattoos crawling up his neck like vines. He moved in with Darla 2 months ago, right about the time her last job fell through. Kid's fine. They got after-school programs and stuff. Probably just chilling. "The school called again," Darla mumbles. "So call him back tomorrow. Tell him you got sick or something." Derek walks over and takes the phone from her hand, tossing it onto the nightstand. "Right now, you and me got better things to do than worry about school drama." He hands her the pipe, and Darla takes it, and somewhere in the back of her mind, a voice screams that her baby is sitting alone in the dark because she chose this instead of him. But the voice gets smaller with each hit, and eventually it disappears entirely. Wednesday morning arrives with the kind of brutal clarity that only the high desert can provide. Cody wakes to find himself still curled in the alcove, his body stiff and aching from a night on concrete. His lips are cracked, his tongue feels thick and strange in his mouth. His stomach has moved past hunger into a kind of hollow emptiness that makes him feel like he's floating slightly outside his own body. He stands slowly, joints protesting, and walks to the front of the school on legs that feel like they belong to someone else. The parking lot is still empty. The sun is just beginning to clear the eastern mountains, painting everything in shades of gold and pink. It's beautiful the way Arizona mornings often are, and Cody hates it because beautiful things shouldn't exist when he feels this bad. The water fountain. He remembers the water fountain near the gym, and this time he doesn't hesitate. His mother said to wait by the flag, but his mother isn't here, and his throat burns like someone poured sand down it. The fountain works. Cold water gushes out when he presses the button, and Cody drinks like he's never tasted anything so wonderful. He drinks until his stomach cramps, then waits for the cramp to pass, then drinks some more. Then he walks back to the flagpole and sits down on the curb and waits. The school day begins at 8 o'clock with the usual chaos of buses and cars and parents running late. Cody watches the other children arrive, watches them stream through the doors with their backpacks and their lunch boxes and their lifts that seem impossibly normal. He could go inside. His classroom is right there, second door on the left after you pass the office. Mrs. Henderson is probably already writing the day's schedule on the whiteboard. His desk, third row back second from the window, is probably empty and waiting for him. But what would he say? How would he explain why he's wearing the same clothes as yesterday? Why his hair is matted and his face is dirty, and he smells like a boy who slept outside? The other kids would laugh. They always laugh when Cody does something weird. So he stays outside, hidden behind the maintenance shed during school hours, emerging only to drink from the fountain when no one is watching. The lunch bell rings at noon, and the playground fills with children. Cody watches them from his hiding spot, watches them play tag and swing on the swings, and argue over the good basketball. His stomach cramps with hunger so intense it brings tears to his eyes. Someone drops a half-eaten apple near the fence. Cody waits until the kids go back inside, then retrieves it. He eats around the brown parts and tries not to think about where it's been. The afternoon passes like a fever dream. Principal Kenneth Ashford walks past Cody at 4:02, briefcase swinging, eyes forward. If he recognizes the boy from yesterday, he gives no sign. The parking lot empties in the same stages as before. The silver Lexus chirps at 3:58, and Bethany Winters clicks past in her expensive heels without a single glance. Officer Paula Vickers drives by at 5:51. This time, Cody waves. It's a small gesture, hesitant, his hand barely rising above his shoulder. He doesn't know what he expects, doesn't know what he hopes for, but something inside him needs to know if anyone can see him. Paula Vickers waves back. A friendly little flutter of fingers, the kind of wave you give to a neighbor's kid or a student crossing the street. Then she continues her patrol, and the cruiser disappears around the corner, and Cody's hand falls back to his side. She saw him. She waved, but she didn't stop. That night, Cody cries. He's back in his alcove, curled around his empty backpack, shaking with cold and hunger, and something that goes deeper than either. The tears come whether he wants them or not, streaming down his cheeks and dripping onto the concrete. Nobody's coming. The thought arrives with the certainty of a mathematical equation. 2 + 2 = 4. The sun rises in the east. Nobody is coming to get Cody Brennan. He cries until he can't cry anymore, until his eyes feel like sandpaper and his chest aches from the sobs. Then he lies in the darkness and stares at nothing and wonders what he did wrong. Was it because he didn't clean his room last week? Was it because he got a C on his spelling test? Was it because he's too loud, too quiet, too needy, not needy enough? 7-year-old minds aren't equipped to understand that sometimes adults fail, that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you choose other things instead. So Cody does what children do. He searches for the explanation within himself. He must have done something wrong. If he'd been better, his mother would have come. Thursday arrives and something has changed in Cody Brennan. The desperate hope that flickered in his eyes on Tuesday is gone. The confused hurt of Wednesday has faded into something harder, something that looks almost like acceptance. He goes through the motions, drinks from the fountain, hides during school hours, returns to the flagpole when the parking lot empties, watches the same people drive past in the same cars with the same expressions of careful indifference. But he doesn't wave anymore. The Prescott Community Church sits directly across Granite Street from the elementary school. It's a handsome building, white clapboard with a steeple that reaches toward heaven, established in 1892, according to the bronze plaque by the entrance. Every Sunday, its parking lot fills with the faithful. Men in pressed slacks and women in floral dresses. Children in their Sunday best, squirming through sermons about loving thy neighbor. The congregation prides itself on community involvement, on charity work, on being the kind of people who make a difference. On Thursday evening, the church holds its weekly Bible study. Cody watches the cars arrive, watches the well-dressed adults climb the steps and disappear through the wooden doors, watches the lights come on inside warm and golden, spilling through the stained glass windows like promises of sanctuary. One woman pauses on the top step. She's maybe 60 with silver hair and a cardigan despite the lingering heat. She's looking across the street, looking directly at Cody, and for a moment their eyes meet across the distance. Cody holds his breath. The woman's brow furrows. Her lips purse. She looks like she might say something might come down those steps and cross the street and ask why a little boy is sitting alone in a parking lot as darkness falls. Then someone calls her name from inside and she turns and the door swings shut behind her and Cody exhales slowly. Close. For a second there it was close. 100 miles southeast of Prescott, in a nondescript office building in downtown Phoenix, Meredith Callahan stares at her computer screen and feels the familiar weight of helplessness pressing down on her shoulders. The spreadsheet in front of her contains the names and case numbers of 47 children currently in the Arizona foster care system under her supervision. 47 kids who've been removed from homes for reasons ranging from neglect to abuse to abandonment. 47 lives in flux caught between families that failed them and a system that often isn't much better. Meredith is 38 years old with auburn hair she wears in a practical ponytail and hazel eyes that have seen too much suffering to maintain their original brightness. She's been working for Child Protective Services for 15 years, and she's good at her job. Good enough that her supervisors keep adding cases to her caseload, confident that Meredith can handle anything. But no one can handle everything. Her desk phone rings and she answers it without looking away from the screen. CPS Callahan? Meredith, it's Donna at intake. What have you got? Anonymous tip that came in about 20 minutes ago. Mail caller said there was a kid sitting alone at Prescott Elementary. Said he drove past earlier today and saw him, then drove past again 6 hours later and the kid was still there. Meredith's fingers pause on the keyboard. Prescott's 2 hours away. I know, I tried the school, got voicemail, left a message. Tried the local PD, they said they'd send someone to check, but you know how that goes. Yes, Meredith knows. Small-town police departments with skeleton crews and priorities that don't always align with CPS concerns. A kid sitting in a parking lot isn't a crime in progress. It's not even necessarily a crisis. Probably just a parent running late, some officer will decide. Probably someone already picked him up. But probably isn't the same as definitely, and Meredith has learned to trust her gut when it comes to children in danger. Who made the call, she asks. Wouldn't give his name. Said he was passing through town on his way to Sedona. Background noise sounded like a motorcycle. A biker. Just some random guy on a road trip who noticed a kid alone and thought someone should know. More than the teachers did, Meredith thinks bitterly. More than the principal or the cops who probably drove right past. I'll make some calls, she says. You got a name for the kid? Nothing. Caller just said a little boy, maybe 6 or 7, sitting by the flagpole. Looked like he'd been there a while. Meredith thanks Donna and hangs up her mind, already racing through possibilities. She pulls up the Prescott Elementary website and finds the main office number. It rings 6 times before going to voicemail. She leaves a message that's more forceful than professional, demanding a callback immediately. She tries the Prescott Police Department next. A bored-sounding desk sergeant assures her that an officer checked the school earlier and everything was fine. What do you mean fine? Meredith presses. I mean there's no problem, ma'am. We got it handled. Was there a child there or wasn't there? A pause, paper shuffling. Officer Vickers noted a juvenile in the area but observed no signs of distress. Did she talk to him? Another pause, longer this time. Ma'am, I'm sure if there was a problem, our officer would have addressed it. Meredith hangs up without saying goodbye, which is rude and she doesn't care. No signs of distress. What does that even mean? A 7-year-old sitting alone in a parking lot for 6 hours and there are no signs of distress. She checks the time. 4:47 p.m. on a Thursday. If she left right now, she could be in Prescott by 7 o'clock. But she has a meeting at 5:30 that can't be rescheduled, and a court appearance tomorrow morning, and the conference in Phoenix this weekend that her supervisor has made very clear is mandatory. You can't save everyone, she reminds herself. It's the mantra of every social worker who's been in the field long enough to learn their limitations. You can't save everyone, so you have to choose. But God, it never stops hurting. The choosing. Meredith stares at her phone and then picks it up and dials a number she hasn't called in almost 3 years. It rings 4 times before a gruff voice answers. Yeah, Griffin, it's Meredith Callahan. Silence on the other end. Then Callahan. Been a while. I know, I need a favor. Griffin Mercer sets his beer on the bar and presses the phone harder against his ear. He's sitting in a roadhouse called the Rusty Spoke about 30 miles west of Phoenix. The place smells like stale cigarettes and cheap whiskey, which suits the clientele just fine. Half a dozen other Hell's Angels sit at tables around him, nursing drinks and playing pool and minding their own business. What kind of favor? Meredith explains. Anonymous tip. Kid alone at school. Cops aren't taking it seriously. She can't get there herself. Prescott's on your way to Flagstaff, she says. I know you've got brothers up there. I'm asking you to check on a child. That's all. Just check on him. Griffin is 63 years old with gray hair pulled back in a ponytail and a beard that reaches his chest. Scars decorate his knuckles and forearms, souvenirs from decades of living on society's edge. He's been president of the Arizona Hells Angels for 11 years, and he's done things in his life that would make most people look away in disgust. But he also remembers what it's like to be a child who needed help and didn't get it. Remembers being 7 years old himself, hiding in a closet while his father beat his mother, praying for someone to come. And he remembers Danny. Danny, who would have been 26 this year. Danny, who died at 8 years old because his father was too busy running guns to be there when it mattered. Danny, whose memory Griffin carries like a stone in his chest, heavy and sharp and impossible to set down. What's the school called? Prescott Elementary, on Granite Street. I'll check it out. But Callahan, if this turns out to be nothing, you owe me a bottle of Jameson. If it turns out to be nothing, I'll buy you a case. Griffin hangs up and finishes his beer in one long swallow. Around him, his brothers are watching with curious eyes. Ray Cordova, his VP, raises an eyebrow. Trouble? Maybe. Got a tip about a kid alone at a school in Prescott. CPS can't get anyone to check on him. Since when do we do welfare checks? Griffin stands, leaving a 20 on the bar. Since right now. You coming? They take the back roads, the ones that wind through desert and scrubland and small towns that haven't changed much since the 1950s. Griffin leads on his Harley with Ray and Dutch Carver following close behind. The sun is setting when they reach Prescott, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that would be beautiful if Griffin were in the mood to notice such things. Prescott Elementary sits on a quiet street lined with old oak trees. Nice neighborhood, well-maintained lawns, the kind of place where people put flags on their porches and wave to their neighbors. The parking lot is empty. Griffin kills his engine and swings off the bike, scanning the area with the automatic awareness of someone who spent time in places where inattention could be fatal. And there by the flagpole, a small figure sits on the curb. The boy is so still that at first Griffin thinks he might be a statue. Then he sees the slight rise and fall of thin shoulders, the way the kid's head turns slowly to track their approach. Jesus Christ, Ray mutters. Griffin walks slowly, deliberately, keeping his hands visible and his movements non-threatening. Up close, the child looks worse than he expected. Sunburned skin peeling across his nose and cheeks, lips cracked and bleeding, eyes that are far too old for a 7-year-old face. He stops 10 feet away and crouches down, making himself smaller. "Hey there," Griffin says softly. "I'm Griffin. What's your name?" The boy's voice comes out as barely a whisper, rough and unused, like he hasn't spoken in a long time. "Cody. Cody. That's a good name." Griffin keeps his voice gentle, the way you'd talk to a frightened animal. "How long you been sitting here, Cody?" The boy's jaw trembles, his eyes well with tears that he blinks back with visible effort. "Since Tuesday, after school. My mom was supposed to pick me up." Behind him, Griffin hears Ray curse under his breath. Dutch makes a sound like he's been punched in the gut. 3 days. This child has been sitting here for 3 days and nobody came. "You hungry, Cody?" The boy's face crumples and he nods, and something in Griffin's chest cracks open like an old wound. He turns to Dutch. "Get some food. Burgers, fries, whatever. And water. Lots of water." Then he looks back at Cody, at this tiny child who's been waiting alone while an entire town looked the other way. "We're going to sit with you until we figure this out, okay? You're not alone anymore." And that's when Griffin makes the call that will change everything. Ray get word out to the chapters. Phoenix, Flagstaff, Tucson. Everyone who can ride needs to be in Prescott by tomorrow afternoon. Ray's eyes widen. "All of them. That's gotta be 500, maybe more." Griffin's jaw tightens. This town left a 7-year-old to die in a parking lot. "I think it's time we made some noise." Meredith Callahan's phone rings at 7:23 p.m. She's still at her desk, buried in paperwork for tomorrow's court appearance, running on coffee and stubbornness. When she sees Griffin's name on the screen, her heart drops into her stomach. "Tell me." "He's been here since Tuesday." Griffin's voice is hard controlled in a way that tells Meredith he's barely containing his rage. 3 days, no food, no water, except what he got from a fountain. Kid's name is Cody Brennan, 7 years old. Mother never showed. Meredith closes her eyes. 3 days. Did you call the police? They drove past him 18 times, Callahan. One of them waved, didn't stop. Her hand tightens on the phone. What about the school? Principal locked the doors every night and went home. Teachers walked right past him. I'll be there first thing tomorrow. I'm calling this in to emergency services tonight, getting someone out there right now. Don't bother. Griffin's voice takes on a different quality. My brothers are coming. 500 of them. We're going to make sure nobody ignores this kid ever again. Meredith's blood runs cold. Griffin, what are you planning? Nothing illegal, just a peaceful gathering of concerned citizens who want to know why a child was left to die while an entire town looked the other way. This could get out of hand. It already got out of hand 3 days ago. He hangs up and Meredith stares at her phone for a long moment. Then she picks it up again and calls her supervisor. I need to take emergency leave, starting now. Meredith, the conference. There's a child in Prescott who's been abandoned for 3 days. Nobody's helping him. I'm going. We have protocols, procedures. You can't just watch me. She hangs up before he can respond, gathers her things, and heads for the door. It's a 2-hour drive to Prescott. By the time she gets there, it will be nearly 10 p.m. But she knows with a certainty that goes beyond logic that she needs to be there. This child, this situation feels like the reason she got into this work in the first place. And in the back of her mind, another memory surfaces. One she tries not to think about too often because thinking about it makes everything else harder to bear. 3 years ago, her daughter Nora was 7 years old, the same age as Cody. 3 years ago, Meredith was trapped in a marriage that was killing her slowly. Her husband, Cal, didn't hit her often, just enough to keep her afraid, just enough to make her doubt herself, her judgment, her right to want something better. Nora saw it all, the bruises Meredith tried to hide, the tears she tried to muffle, the way her father looked at her mother like she was something to be controlled rather than loved. One night, Cal went too far, threw Meredith against a wall hard enough to crack a rib, and Nora, 7-year-old Nora, ran to the neighbors and begged them to call for help. They didn't. "It's a family matter," Mrs. Henderson said, closing her door in Nora's face. "Best not to get involved." Meredith had to drive herself to the hospital that night, Nora silent and terrified in the back seat. She filed for divorce the next day and never looked back. But she never forgot the way it felt to watch her daughter beg for help and be turned away. Never forgot the lesson that good people, normal people, respectable people will watch you suffer and decide it's not their problem. That's why she does this work. That's why she fights so hard for kids who can't fight for themselves. Because she knows what it's like when nobody comes. The highway stretches before her dark and empty, and Meredith drives toward Prescott with her hands tight on the wheel and a prayer in her heart that she's not too late. Cody Brennan sleeps that night with a full stomach for the first time in 3 days. Griffin and his brothers have set up a kind of camp in the church parking lot across from the school, folding chairs and coolers and a small generator that powers a string of lights. The church deacon came out around 9 p.m. to complain about the noise and the motorcycles and the general disruption to the neighborhood. Griffin looked at him with eyes that had seen men die and said very quietly, "There's a 7-year-old boy who's been sleeping on concrete for 3 nights while your congregation held Bible study 50 feet away. You want to talk to me about disruption?" The deacon went back inside and didn't come out again. Now Cody sits in a folding chair wrapped in a jacket that's 3 sizes too big for him, eating his second cheeseburger, while Dutch tells him stories about riding through the desert and the time Ray got chased by a javelina and swore it was a wild boar the size of a car. Cody doesn't laugh. He hasn't laughed in a long time. But something in his eyes has softened some of the wariness, giving way to something that looks almost like hope. Around midnight, Griffin gets a text from the Phoenix Chapter 120 riders ready to roll at first light. Tucson checks in with 87. Flagstaff has 63. Even the small charter in Yuma is sending 15. By morning, over 500 Hells Angels will descend on Prescott, Arizona, and they won't leave until someone explains why a child was left to die while a whole town watched. Griffin looks at Cody, at this small boy with the Spider-Man backpack and the eyes that have seen too much too young, and he thinks about Danny. Danny would have liked this kid, would have shown him the secret handshake and taught him which bikes made the coolest sounds and promised to teach him to ride as soon as his legs were long enough to reach the pegs. Danny never got the chance to grow up, but maybe, just maybe, Griffin can make sure Cody does. 2 hours away, Meredith Callahan crosses the Prescott city limits with the kind of determination that has carried her through 15 years of bureaucratic roadblocks and impossible cases. Tomorrow, everything changes. For Cody, for this town, for everyone who thought they could look away and pretend it wasn't their problem. The sun rises over Arizona, and with it comes a reckoning that Prescott will never forget. The sound begins at dawn, low and rumbling, like distant thunder rolling across the desert floor. It starts as a vibration more than a noise, something you feel in your chest before you hear it with your ears. The windows of Prescott's downtown shops begin to rattle in their frames. Car alarms trigger one by one down Granite Street, their electronic shrieks adding a desperate counterpoint to the growing roar. Meredith Callahan stands in the parking lot of the Prescott Motor Lodge, where she checked in at midnight after a 2-hour drive fueled by coffee and righteous anger. She hasn't slept, couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw a 7-year-old boy sitting alone on a curb, waiting for someone who never came. Now she watches the horizon, and what she sees takes her breath away. Motorcycles, hundreds of them, pouring into town from every direction like rivers converging on a single point. They come down Highway 89 from the north, up Route 69 from the south, along the winding mountain roads from the east and west. The early morning sun catches chrome and steel, turning the procession into a river of fire and light. 500 Hells Angels riding to war. Not a war of violence, not a war of weapons and blood, a war of presence, a war of witness, a war that says to the good people of Prescott, we see what you did, we see what you failed to do, and we will not let you look away anymore. Meredith gets in her car and drives toward the elementary school. The scene that greets her is unlike anything she's experienced in 15 years of child protective services. The church parking lot across from Prescott Elementary has been transformed into a staging area. Motorcycles line up in neat rows, their riders dismounting with the disciplined efficiency of soldiers. Men and women in leather vests move with purpose, setting up tables, unloading coolers, stringing up tarps for shade. The patches on their backs all bear the same insignia, a winged skull above the words Hell's Angels in Arizona. Griffin Mercer stands at the center of it all, directing traffic with hand signals and quiet commands. He looks like he hasn't slept either, but there's an energy about him that transcends exhaustion. A purpose. And across the street, sitting in the same spot he's occupied for 3 days, Cody Brennan watches everything with wide, uncertain eyes. Meredith parks her car and approaches Griffin, her CPS badge visible on the lanyard around her neck. "You made it," Griffin says without turning around. "Did you really think I wouldn't?" He glances at her then and something passes between them. An understanding. They've been in the trenches together before 5 years ago when they worked opposite ends of a child trafficking case that ended with 6 kids rescued and 4 men in prison. Griffin's intel had been crucial. Meredith's legal expertise had sealed the convictions. They're not friends exactly, but they respect each other. "How's the boy?" Meredith asks. "Ate 2 cheeseburgers and half a pizza last night. Drank about a gallon of water. Slept in the back of Dutch's truck because he was afraid to go inside anywhere." Griffin's jaw tightens. Kid's terrified of his own shadow. Whatever his home life was like, it wasn't good. Meredith nods. She's seen it before. Children who flinch at sudden movements, who apologize for existing, who've learned that adults are not to be trusted, that help comes with conditions, that love is a transaction that can be revoked at any moment. "I need to talk to him," she says, "officially." "I figured." But Callahan, Griffin's pale blue eyes hold hers. "Go easy. He's been through enough." Meredith crosses Granite Street with the weight of bureaucracy on her shoulders. She's carrying forms. So many forms. Emergency intake questionnaires and mandatory reporting documents and custody evaluation checklists. The machinery of child protection is thorough, comprehensive, and completely inadequate for moments like this. Cody sees her coming. He doesn't run, doesn't hide, but something in his posture shifts. His shoulders hunch forward. His eyes drop to the ground. The body language of a child who has learned that adults with clipboards rarely bring good news. Meredith stops a few feet away and crouches down, putting herself at his eye level. "Hi, Cody. My name is Meredith. I work for an organization that helps kids who need help. Is it okay if I sit with you for a minute?" The boy looks up, studies her face with an intensity that seems too old for 7 years. "Are you going to take me away?" The question hits Meredith like a physical blow. Not because it's unexpected, but because of the way he asks it. Not with fear, not with hope. Just tired resignation, like being taken away, is simply the next item on an endless list of things that happen to Cody Brennan, whether he wants them to or not. "That depends," Meredith says honestly, "on a lot of things. But right now, I just want to make sure you're okay. Can you tell me what happened in your own words?" Cody is quiet for a long moment. Then he speaks, his voice barely above a whisper. "Mom said, wait by the flag. She said she'd come. I waited and waited, but she didn't come. I was hungry, but I didn't have any more food. The water fountain works sometimes. I found a place to sleep behind the school where no one could see me. Did anyone ask if you needed help?" The police lady waved at me. Cody's brow furrows like he's trying to work out a puzzle that doesn't make sense. I waved back, but she kept driving. Meredith feels something cold settle in her stomach. 18 times. Paula Vickers drove past this child 18 times, and the most she offered was a wave. "What about your teachers?" "The principal." "They walk past. They always walk past." Cody looks down at his worn sneakers. "I tried to be invisible. Mom says no one likes a pest." The picture forming in Meredith's mind is all too familiar. A mother who treats her child as an inconvenience. A boy who's learned to take up as little space as possible, to need as little as possible, to expect as little as possible. "Cody, do you know where your mom is now?" He shakes his head. "She has a new boyfriend, Derek. He doesn't like me very much. Sometimes they go away for a while and I stay with the neighbor lady, but the neighbor lady moved last month." Meredith makes a note. Absent mother, hostile boyfriend. previous informal care arrangements that have fallen through. The pieces click together with the grim precision of a case file she's read 100 times before. Cody, I want you to know something important. She waits until his eyes meet hers again. What happened to you is not your fault. Do you understand none of this is because of anything you did? For a moment, something flickers in the boy's expression. Doubt, hope, confusion. Then the walls come back up, and he's just a tired child sitting on a curb waiting for whatever comes next. The first police cruiser arrives at 7:23 a.m. Officer Paula Vickers steps out, her hand resting on her service weapon. She's called for backup, but backup is 10 minutes away, and in the meantime, she's facing a parking lot full of Hell's Angels in a situation that definitely wasn't covered in her academy training. Everyone needs to disperse, she announces, her voice carrying the forced authority of someone who knows she's outnumbered. This is private property. Griffin walks toward her slowly, his hands visible at his sides. Behind him, 500 riders fall silent, watching. Actually, officer, the church parking lot is open to the public. Says so right there on the sign. He gestures toward a small placard near the entrance. All are welcome. You're creating a disturbance. No, ma'am, we're standing in a public place. Last I checked, that's not a crime. Griffin stops a few feet from Vickers, towering over her by nearly a foot. But you know what is child neglect, child abandonment, leaving a 7-year-old to fend for himself for 3 days while an entire town pretends he doesn't exist. Vickers' face flushes. I don't know what you're talking about. Really, because according to that boy over there, you drove past him 18 times since Tuesday, waved at him once, never stopped, never asked if he was okay, never called it in. The flush deepens. I observed a juvenile in the area. There were no signs of distress. Griffin's voice drops to something cold and dangerous. No signs of distress. A child sleeping on concrete. A child going 3 days without food. A child drinking from a water fountain because that's all he had. And you saw no signs of distress. I didn't know. You didn't look. The accusation hangs in the air like smoke. More police cars arrive. Then news vans. Word has spread through the town, through social media, through the strange alchemy of information that turns local incidents into national stories overnight. By 8 o'clock, AM3 television crews are set up on Granite Street, their cameras capturing footage that will play on every major network before lunch. Principal Kenneth Ashford arrives at 8:15, his face pale and his lawyer at his side. He pushes through the growing crowd, briefcase in hand, like he's arriving for just another day at work. But there's nothing normal about this day, and the look on his face says he knows it. What is the meaning of this, he demands, addressing no one in particular. This is school property. You're disrupting the educational environment. Meredith steps forward, her badge visible. Mr. Ashford, I'm Meredith Callahan, Arizona Child Protective Services. I'd like to ask you some questions about Cody Brennan. Who? The 7-year-old boy who's been sitting in your parking lot for 3 days. Ashford's face goes through a rapid series of expressions. Confusion, recognition, panic. Then a mask of professional concern slides into place. I wasn't aware of any ongoing situation. You walked past him, Griffin interrupts. Every day, twice a day, locked the doors and went home while he slept on concrete. I had no way of knowing. His name is on your enrollment roster. Meredith's voice is flat, controlled, the voice of someone who has dealt with too many administrators making too many excuses. Cody Brennan, 2nd grade, Mrs. Henderson's class. Did anyone notice he wasn't coming to school this week? Ashford opens his mouth, closes it, looks at his lawyer. My client will not be answering questions at this time, the lawyer says smoothly. Any inquiries can be directed to the school district's legal office. Of course, Meredith makes a note on her clipboard. I'm sure the state licensing board will be very interested in the school district's legal perspective. The crowd has grown, parents arriving for the school day. Neighbors curious about the commotion. Church members wondering why 500 motorcycles are parked in their lot. The energy is strange, charged with something between carnival and confrontation. Bethany Winters arrives at 8:47. She parks her silver Lexus 2 blocks away, trying to avoid the cameras, but someone recognizes her. That's one of the teachers, a voice calls out. She walked right past him. Bethany freezes. The crowd parts around her, not threatening, but watching. Always watching. She makes it halfway to the school entrance before she breaks down. The tears come suddenly, mascara running down her cheeks, designer sunglasses pushed up onto her forehead as she covers her face with her hands. "I didn't know," she sobs. "I thought someone else would handle it. I thought it wasn't my place to interfere." Meredith watches this display with complicated emotions. Part of her wants to comfort the woman. Part of her wants to shake her. Part of her just wants to understand how a person can walk past a suffering child and tell themselves it's someone else's problem. "Mrs. Winters," she says quietly, stepping closer, "I need to ask you some questions." "I saw him." The words come out in a rush like a confession. "I saw him sitting there on Tuesday, and Wednesday, and Thursday. I thought his mother was just running late. I thought the office would handle it. I thought—" "You thought someone else would care," Griffin says from behind Meredith. "So you decided you didn't have to." Bethany looks up at him, this massive biker with the scarred knuckles and the cold eyes, and something in her expression shifts. "I was like him once." Her voice drops to a whisper. "When I was 9, my mother left me at a bus station. I sat there for 2 days before anyone asked if I needed help." The parking lot goes silent. "And when you saw Cody sitting alone," Meredith says slowly, "you saw yourself and you couldn't face it." Bethany doesn't answer. She doesn't have to. The news breaks nationally at 11 a.m. Every major network runs the footage: 500 Hell's Angels surrounding an elementary school, a small boy in a Spider-Man backpack sitting on a curb, the faces of teachers and administrators and police officers who are suddenly being asked to explain the inexplicable. "Abandoned for 3 days," the headlines scream. "Outlaw bikers save boy that town ignored." Social media explodes. Twitter trends with hashtags, #justice for Cody, #who failed this child, #biker heroes. The story becomes a lightning rod for every argument about community responsibility, institutional failure, the difference between respectable citizens and actual good people. In Phoenix, Meredith's supervisor calls 6 times. She ignores every call. In Prescott, the mayor arrives with a police escort and a prepared statement about launching a full investigation. He looks directly into the cameras with practiced sincerity, promising accountability and reform and justice. He doesn't look at Cody once. Griffin watches the political theater unfold with the weary cynicism of someone who's seen it all before. "They're going to make speeches," he says to Meredith, "form committees, draft policies. In 6 months, everyone will have forgotten, and the next kid who falls through the cracks will be just as alone as Cody was." "Maybe," Meredith says, "but not today, not this kid. What happens to him now?" It's the question Meredith has been dreading. The honest answer is she doesn't know. Emergency foster placement tonight, certainly. Then a long process of custody hearings in family court and bureaucratic machinery grinding forward at its own inexorable pace. The system will claim Cody Brennan, will assign him a case number and a file, and a series of temporary homes while adults argue about his future. Will do its best to help him within the limits of budgets and regulations and the fundamental impossibility of fixing broken families. It's not enough. It's never enough. "For now, I'm taking him into protective custody," she says. "Emergency placement until we can locate his mother and assess the situation." "Foster care?" "Probably." Griffin is quiet for a moment. Then he says something that catches Meredith off guard. "What if there was another option?" She turns to face him. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if someone wanted to take care of him? Long-term, permanent." "Griffin, you're the president of an outlaw motorcycle club. No court in Arizona is going to place a child with you." "I know." His jaw tightens. "That's why I'm not offering." Meredith frowns. "Then who?" Before Griffin can answer, a commotion erupts near the school entrance. A woman is pushing through the crowd screaming Cody's name. She's thin, too thin, with lank brown hair and the telltale sores of long-term drug use visible on her arms. Her clothes are rumpled, her eyes wild, and she's heading straight for the boy who hasn't moved from his spot by the flagpole. "That's my baby!" Darla Brennan shrieks. "Get away from my baby! You can't take him!" Cody sees his mother coming. His reaction is not what anyone expects. He doesn't run toward her with relief, doesn't cry out with joy. Instead, he shrinks back, pulling his knees to his chest, making himself as small as possible. The body language of a child who has learned that his mother's arrival doesn't mean safety. Darla reaches for him, and Cody flinches. Come on, baby. We're going home. Her voice has shifted, turned syrupy sweet, the performance of maternal love for the cameras she knows are watching. Mommy's here now. Everything's going to be okay. Meredith moves to intervene. Ma'am, I need you to step back. Who the hell are you? This is my son. I'm Meredith Callahan, Child Protective Services. Your son has been alone for 3 days. I need to ask you some questions. I don't have to answer your questions. Darla's eyes dart around looking for an escape route, a sympathetic face, anything she can use. I had an emergency. I couldn't get here. These bikers probably kidnapped him or something. Ma'am, your son was sitting in this parking lot for 72 hours. School officials, police officers, and dozens of citizens walked past him without offering assistance. The only people who stopped to help were our own criminals, Darla spits. You're going to believe a bunch of criminals over a mother. I want my lawyer. Ma'am, you're not under arrest. I'm simply trying to establish. You're trying to steal my kid. Darla lunges forward, grabbing Cody's arm and yanking him to his feet. We're leaving right now. Cody cries out in pain, and the sound cuts through the chaos like a knife. Griffin moves faster than anyone expects for a man his size. He doesn't touch Darla, doesn't threaten her. He simply steps between her and any path of escape, his massive frame blocking her way with the immovable certainty of a granite wall. Let go of the boy, he says quietly, or what, you'll hit me in front of all these cameras. Darla laughs, a harsh, desperate sound. I know my rights. I know how this works. You don't know anything. Griffin's voice doesn't rise, but something in it makes Darla's grip loosen involuntarily. You left your 7-year-old son alone for 3 days. You ignored calls from his school. You chose drugs over your own child. And now you want to take him back to whatever hellhole you crawled out of. You can't prove any of that. I don't have to prove it. I just have to keep you here until the people who can prove it do their jobs. Meredith steps forward, her phone already in her hand. Ms. Brennan, I'm requesting a police officer to escort you to the station for questioning. You're not under arrest, but given the circumstances, I strongly advise you to cooperate. For a moment, it looks like Darla might fight. Then she looks around, at the cameras, at the crowds, at the 500 bikers watching her with expressions that promise consequences she can't imagine. She lets go of Cody's arm. This isn't over, she hisses. He's my son. The law says he's mine. She lets herself be led away by 2 officers still shouting about her rights and her lawyers and how everyone will be sorry. Cody watches her go. His face shows no emotion. No relief at her departure, no grief at watching his mother escorted away in handcuffs of bureaucracy, if not steel. Just the flat, exhausted acceptance of a child who has learned that nothing good ever lasts. Meredith kneels beside him. Cody, I need to take you somewhere safe for tonight. There's a nice lady named Mrs. Patterson who takes care of kids who need a place to stay. It's temporary just until we figure things out. Okay. He looks at her with those ancient eyes. Will the motorcycle men come? Meredith glances at Griffin, who nods almost imperceptibly. Yes, she says. They'll check on you, and so will I, so will I. It's a promise she has no business making. Her caseload is already impossible. Prescott is 2 hours from Phoenix. The system doesn't accommodate personal promises. It runs on forms and procedures and strictly delineated professional boundaries. But Cody Brennan has spent 3 days learning that promises mean nothing. Meredith intends to teach him differently. The emergency foster home is a modest house in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Prescott. Mrs. Lydia Patterson has been doing this for 23 years. She's seen every kind of broken child, every kind of unthinkable situation. Her home is clean and warm, her rules are fair, and she asks no questions that don't need asking. 2 other children are already there. A teenage girl named Jamie who barely speaks, and a 5-year-old boy named Marcus who hasn't stopped asking when his daddy is coming to get him. Cody is given a bed in a room he'll share with Marcus. The sheets are clean, the pillow is soft. There's a nightlight plugged into the wall because Mrs. Patterson knows that children who've been through trauma often fear the dark. He sits on the edge of the bed, his Spider-Man backpack clutched to his chest, and waits. Meredith watches him from the doorway. I'll come back tomorrow, she says, to check on you and to talk about what happens next. Cody nods without looking up. Griffin, the man with the gray beard, he wants you to know that you're not alone anymore, that there are people who care about what happens to you. Still no response. Meredith hesitates. Protocol says she should leave. Should let the child settle in, give him space, allow the foster care process to work the way it's supposed to work. But protocol also said that 18 police drive-bys were adequate supervision for an abandoned child. Cody, can I tell you something? He finally looks up, waiting. When I was about your age, my mother was very sick. She couldn't take care of me the way she wanted to. I spent a lot of time feeling alone, even when there were people around. I thought it was my fault. I thought if I was better, smarter, quieter, easier, then maybe things would be different. Cody's eyes are fixed on hers now, unblinking. It took me a long time to understand that it wasn't about me, that sometimes adults fail, and it's not because the children in their care deserve to be failed. It's because being a good parent, being a good person is hard, and not everyone is strong enough to do it. My mom isn't strong, Cody whispers. No, she isn't. But that's not your fault, and it's not your job to fix her. Meredith crouches down so she's at his eye level. What happened to you waiting alone for 3 days that was wrong? The adults who walked past you, who saw you and did nothing, they were wrong. You deserve better. You deserve better. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you get it. For a long moment, Cody is silent. Then so quietly, Meredith almost misses it. Promise. I promise. It's late when Meredith finally leaves Mrs. Patterson's house. The drive back to Phoenix stretches before her 2 hours of dark highway and thoughts she can't escape. Tomorrow will bring paperwork, court filings, interviews and assessments, and the grinding machinery of a system that means well, but moves slowly. She's halfway to her car when her phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Church parking lot, 10 minutes. Need to talk. She shouldn't go. It's late. She's exhausted. Whatever Griffin Mercer wants to discuss can wait until tomorrow, when there are witnesses and proper channels and professional boundaries firmly in place. But something about today has shifted her understanding of proper channels. Proper channels left a child alone for 3 days. She turns her car toward the church. Griffin is waiting by his motorcycle, smoking a cigarette that glows orange in the darkness. The parking lot is empty now, the other riders having dispersed to hotels and homes and wherever Hell's Angels go when they're not making statements. But Griffin stayed, watching, waiting. Callahan. He nods as she approaches. Thought you might come. What do you want, Griffin? He takes a long drag on the cigarette, exhales slowly. I did some digging this afternoon, made some calls. Darla Brennan's got a sheet going back 8 years. Possession, distribution, 2 DUIs, 1 assault charge that got dropped when the witness disappeared. Another drag. This isn't the first time she's left Cody alone. Meredith's stomach tightens. What do you mean? 2 years ago, neighbors called the cops because they could hear a kid crying in the apartment next door. By the time anyone got there, Darla had been gone 5 days. Kid was surviving on dry cereal and tap water. CPS opened a case. I didn't see that in the system. It was closed. Someone signed off on it, said the situation had been resolved. Griffin's eyes meet hers in the darkness. You want to guess who signed? Meredith feels the blood drain from her face. Who are you? Kenneth Ashford. Turns out he's an old family friend of the Brennans. Went to high school with Darla's mother. He vouched for Darla, said it was a misunderstanding, convinced CPS to drop the case. That's not, he can't, he did. And then 2 years later, the same kid ends up sitting in his parking lot for 3 days, and he walks past like he's never seen the boy before. Meredith's mind races. If this is true and she has no reason to doubt Griffin's sources, then this isn't just negligence. It's a cover-up, an ongoing pattern of a community protecting one of its own while a child suffered. I need documentation, she says, records, proof. I can get you what I have, but Callahan, there's something else. Griffin drops his cigarette, grinds it out with his boot. This kid is going to end up in the system. I've seen how that goes. Foster homes, group homes, shuffled around like a piece of furniture nobody wants. And maybe he gets lucky, finds a decent family, grows up okay. But maybe he doesn't. Maybe he ends up like half the kids I've known who came out of that system broken, angry, alone. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that kid needs someone who's going to fight for him, not just process his paperwork, not just check the boxes, someone who's going to make sure he doesn't fall through the cracks again. And you think that someone is you? Griffin shakes his head slowly. No, I know who I am. I know what I've done. No judge in their right mind would give me custody of a child, and maybe they'd be right not to. His voice drops. But you, Callahan, you've got a do-redder. You've got a home. You've got 15 years of proving you give a damn about kids who don't have anyone else. Meredith stares at him. You're asking me to adopt him. I'm asking you to think about it. That's all. Just think about it. The idea is insane. Meredith is a single mother with a demanding job and a caseload that already threatens to bury her. Nora is only 10, still adjusting to life after the divorce, still carrying her own wounds from watching her parents' marriage fall apart. Bringing another child into that mix, a traumatized child, a child who will need years of therapy and patience and unconditional love, it's too much. It's asking too much. But then she thinks about Cody, sitting alone on that curb, waiting for someone who never came. And she thinks about Nora, standing on a neighbor's porch, begging for help that never came. 2 children, 2 moments of abandonment, 2 chances for the world to prove it cared. The world failed them both. Maybe it's time for Meredith to succeed where the world failed. I'll think about it, she says finally. But Griffin, this isn't your decision to make. It's not even mine. There are processes, evaluations. Cody's mother still has parental rights. For now, but Callahan, Griffin climbs onto his motorcycle, the engine rumbling to life with a sound like controlled thunder. The clock is ticking. Every day that kid spends in limbo is another day he learns that nobody really wants him. You know what that does to a child. He rides away into the darkness, leaving Meredith alone with a decision that could change everything. She stands in the empty parking lot for a long time looking at the school across the street. The flagpole, where Cody sat for 3 days. The curb that was his bed. The locked doors that should have protected him and instead shut him out. Then she gets in her car and drives home because there's nothing more she can do tonight. But tomorrow she thinks. Tomorrow everything changes. The next morning brings legal proceedings that move with unusual speed. The story has gone national. Senators are making statements. The governor has called for a full investigation. The kind of institutional pressure that normally takes months to build has condensed into 48 hours of unrelenting media attention. Darla Brennan sits in a county holding facility, facing charges of child abandonment and neglect. Her court-appointed lawyer has advised her to cooperate, but cooperation is not in Darla's nature. She maintains that she was kidnapped by her boyfriend, held against her will, prevented from returning for her son. The evidence suggests otherwise. Phone records show she made 12 calls during the 3 days Cody was alone. None to the school, none to the police, none to family members who might have picked him up. The calls were to drug dealers, to Derek's associates, to a pawn shop where she sold her grandmother's ring for $30. The judge grants emergency custody to the state. Cody will remain in foster care while the legal process unfolds. Meredith is there for every hearing, every interview, every moment when Cody might need someone to speak for him, to fight for him, to remind the system that he's a child and not just a case number. Griffin is there too, always on the periphery, watching, waiting. His presence a silent reminder that the hellsangels haven't forgotten, haven't moved on, won't let this story fade into obscurity. On the 3rd day after Cody's rescue, Meredith goes home to Phoenix. Nora is waiting for her. Mom, I saw you on TV. Her daughter's voice is carefully neutral, the way it always gets when she's processing something big. That little boy, the one who was alone, his name is Cody. Is he okay? Meredith sits down on the couch, suddenly exhausted in ways that have nothing to do with physical fatigue. I don't know, honey. I hope so, but he's been through a lot. Nora is quiet for a moment, 10 years old, but with eyes that have seen too much, the eyes of a child who once begged for help and was turned away. When I went to Mrs. Henderson's house that night, she says slowly, and she closed the door, I thought maybe I did something wrong, that she didn't help because I wasn't worth helping. Oh, sweetheart, Meredith pulls her daughter close. That wasn't your fault. You were so brave. You did exactly the right thing. I know that now, but I didn't know it then. And I think, Nora hesitates, I think that boy probably feels the same way. He does. Can we help him? Like really help him? Not just the foster care stuff, but really. Meredith looks at her daughter, this child who has been through so much, who still carries scars from her father's violence and the world's indifference. This child who, despite everything, still wants to reach out, still wants to help someone who hurts the way she once hurt. What would you think, Meredith says carefully. If Cody came to live with us, Nora doesn't answer right away. She's always been a thoughtful child, more interested in right answers than quick ones. Would he be my brother? Maybe, eventually. If that's what he wanted, if that's what we all wanted. Would it be hard? Yes, very hard. He's been through things that will take a long time to heal. There would be difficult days. Days when he's angry or scared and we might not know how to help. Like when Dad used to make you cry and I didn't know what to do. Meredith's heart breaks a little. Something like that. But Nora, I need you to understand this isn't just my decision. It would change our family forever. If you don't want this, if it feels like too much, that's okay. That's completely okay. Nora is silent for a long time. Then she looks up at her mother with eyes that have seen too much but still believe in something better. I don't want him to be alone anymore, she says to you. I know what alone feels like. Nobody should feel like that. And in that moment, Meredith Callahan makes her decision. The paperwork is overwhelming. Emergency guardianship applications, background checks, home studies, financial assessments. The machinery of adoption doesn't care that this case has captured national attention. It grinds forward at its own glacial pace. Griffin helps where he can. The Hells Angels hire a lawyer for Meredith, one of the best family law attorneys in the state. They set up a fund for Cody's future expenses, education, therapy, whatever he needs. They don't ask for recognition or credit. They just do it because some things matter more than reputation. Darla Brennan fights the process every step of the way. From her holding cell, she files motions and objections and appeals. She claims she's being persecuted, claims the bikers framed her, claims Meredith is trying to steal her son for some undefined nefarious purpose. None of it gains traction. The evidence is too overwhelming. The story is too public. The tide of public opinion has turned so decisively against Darla that even her court-appointed lawyer advises her to cut her losses. But she won't. She can't. Because giving up Cody would mean admitting what she did, and Darla Brennan has spent her whole life refusing to admit anything. 6 weeks after the rescue, Griffin comes to Meredith with news. Ashford resigned it, he says. School board accepted it quietly, trying to avoid more attention. But I've got sources on the board. They found emails. He knew about the previous incident with Cody. He buried the report himself, called in favors to make it disappear. Can we prove it? We can prove enough, and I've got something else. He hands her a manila envelope. Darla's boyfriend, Derek, skipped town 2 weeks ago, but before he left, he did an interview with a reporter, said Darla knew exactly what she was doing, said she talked about Cody being off her hands for a while, said the whole thing was her idea. Meredith opens the envelope. Inside is a transcript and a recording. The recording is devastating. Derek's voice casual and indifferent, describing how Darla planned to leave Cody at the school for a few days while they took care of business. How she laughed when the school called, said she'd deal with it later. How she never intended to go back. This changes everything, Meredith breathes. I know. That's why I brought it to you first. Griffin's expression is unreadable. You decide what to do with it. The hearing is set for a Thursday morning in November. 3 months have passed since Cody Brennan sat alone in a parking lot waiting for someone to care. In that time, he's been living with Mrs. Patterson, visiting with Meredith and Nora every weekend, slowly learning that not all adults abandon the children in their care. The courtroom is packed. Hell's Angels fill half the gallery, their leather vests incongruous against the wood-paneled formality of family court. Reporters crowd the back rows, cameras prohibited, but notebooks at the ready. Teachers and administrators from Prescott Elementary sit on the opposite side, their expressions tight with the awareness that they're here to be judged as much as Darla Brennan. Judge Margaret Thornton presides. She's 58 years old with steel gray hair and a reputation for fairness that extends equally to all parties, a reputation that has made her unpopular with those who prefer judges who can be influenced. Darla is brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit. She looks worse than she did 3 months ago. The drugs have been cut off in custody, and withdrawal has not been kind. Her skin is sallow, her hair lank, her eyes darting around the courtroom like a cornered animal looking for escape. But there is no escape. Not from this. Meredith watches from the front row, Nora's hand clasped in hers. Beside them, Griffin Mercer sits in silence, his presence a reminder of everything that brought them to this moment. The evidence is presented with methodical precision. The phone records, the timeline of abandonment, Derek's interview, the buried CPS report from 2 years ago, Kenneth Ashford's resignation letter, which contains language that lawyers recognize as an admission of culpability, carefully disguised as bureaucratic regret. Cody is not required to testify. Judge Thornton ruled early in the proceedings that asking a 7-year-old to recount his trauma in open court would cause unnecessary harm. Instead, a court-appointed psychologist presents her evaluation: TSD, attachment disorder, severe trust issues, but also remarkable resilience and the potential for healing with proper support. Darla's lawyer does what he can. He presents her as a victim of addiction, a product of poverty and circumstance. He argues that terminating her parental rights would be punitive rather than protective, that with treatment and support she could become the mother Cody deserves. Judge Thornton listens with the patience of someone who has heard it all before. Then she asks Darla a single question. Ms. Brennan, if I were to grant you custody of your son today, what would you do? Darla's face goes blank. It's the kind of question that should have an easy answer. Take him home. Hug him. Promise to do better. The answers that any parent fighting to keep their child would give automatically, instinctively from the heart. But Darla has no heart for this, has never had heart for this. Cody was an accident, a burden, a problem to be managed rather than a child to be loved. I'd take care of him, she says finally. Better than before. I've learned my lesson. And how would you take care of him? Where would you live? How would you support him? What would you do differently? The silence stretches. Darla has no answers because she's never thought about the questions, has never imagined a future where Cody's needs came before her own, has never wanted to imagine such a future. Your Honor, her lawyer interjects, my client is still in custody. These are hypothetical questions that she cannot reasonably be expected to. Counsel, I'm asking what's in her heart. Judge Thornton's voice is not unkind, but it is unyielding. A mother fighting for her child should be able to articulate what she would do with that child if given the chance. I'm giving Ms. Brennan that chance. More silence. Then Darla looks at the judge with something that might be honesty. I don't know, she whispers. I don't know how to be what he needs. I never did. It's the most truthful thing she's said in the entire proceeding, and in its way it's also a form of surrender. The ruling comes 2 weeks later. Judge Thornton's opinion runs 47 pages. It details the history of neglect, the institutional failures, the community's complicity. It condemns Kenneth Ashford by name. It recommends policy changes that will become known eventually as the Cody Laws. And on page 43, it terminates Darla Brennan's parental rights. On page 44, it grants Meredith Callahan permanent custody with the intention of full adoption. Cody is in the courtroom when the ruling is read. He sits between Meredith and Nora, his small hand clasped in Meredith's larger one. He doesn't fully understand the legal language, the wherefores and therebys of judicial decree. But he understands when Meredith turns to him with tears streaming down her face and says, "You're coming home with us. For good." And for the first time in months, maybe for the first time in his life, Cody Brennan smiles. The letter arrives on a Tuesday morning. Meredith is sitting at her kitchen table nursing her second cup of coffee and reviewing case files that have piled up during the week she spent focused on Cody's custody battle. The sun streams through the window, casting warm rectangles of light across the worn wooden surface. From down the hall comes the sound of Nora's voice reading aloud to Cody from a book about dinosaurs. The envelope is plain white, no return address, postmarked from the Maricopa County Correctional Facility. Meredith knows what it is before she opens it, knows who it's from, but her hands still tremble slightly as she slides her finger under the flap. The handwriting is cramped and uneven. The letters of someone who hasn't written much in a long time. Stains dot the paper coffee or tears or something else entirely. She reads, "Dear Cody, I don't know if anyone will let you see this letter. Maybe they shouldn't. Maybe the best thing for you is to forget I ever existed. But I needed to write it anyway, even if it just sits in a file somewhere and you never know it exists. I'm sorry. Those words aren't big enough for what I did. There aren't words big enough. I left you alone because you was too weak to be your mother, too broken to put you first, too lost in my own darkness and to see the light you needed me to be. When I was a little girl, my mama used to tell me that being a parent was the hardest job in the world. I didn't understand what she meant until I had you, and then I understood too well. It was hard, Cody, harder than I could handle. And instead of asking for help, instead of admitting I was drowning, I just kept sinking and I pulled you down with me. The truth is, I never knew how to love you right. I wanted to. God knows I wanted to. But wanting isn't the same as doing. And every time I looked at you, I saw all the ways I was failing. It was easier to look away, easier to pretend you didn't need me, easier to choose the drugs that made everything feel far away and unimportant. That's not an excuse. There is no excuse. I'm just trying to explain something I don't fully understand myself. I met your father when I was 19. He was charming and funny, and he made me feel like I was special. Then you came along, and suddenly I wasn't special anymore. I was just a tired woman with a crying baby and a man who didn't want to be tied down. He left before your first birthday. I've been angry about that ever since, angry at him, angry at you for existing, angry at myself for not being strong enough to handle it alone. That anger poisoned everything. I know what the judge said. I know my rights have been terminated. I know that woman Meredith is going to adopt you and give you the kind of life I never could. And here's the thing, Cody. The thing that took me 3 months in a jail cell to figure out, I'm glad. I'm glad someone finally saw you. I'm glad someone stopped when I couldn't. I'm glad you're going to grow up in a house where people show up when they say they will, where dinner happens every night, where someone checks your homework and tucks you in and tells you they love you and means it. You deserve that. You always deserve that. I was just too broken to give it to you. The lawyers wanted me to fight, said I had a chance, said the system favors biological parents, said I could drag this out for years if I wanted to. And for a while I thought about it. Not because I wanted you back. I know I can't take care of you, but because fighting felt better than admitting I failed. Then I thought about what that would do to you. Years of court dates and custody hearings and never knowing where you belong. Years of hoping and being disappointed. Years of me using you as a weapon in a war has started and can't win. I won't do that to you, not anymore. So I'm signing the papers, not because the court is making me, because it's the first right thing I've done for you in 7 years, maybe the only right thing. I'm going to stay in here for a while. The judge gave me 18 months, and I'm not going to fight that either. They have programs, drug treatment, and counseling, and classes about being a better person. I don't know if any of it will work. I don't know if I can change. But I'm going to try not so I can get you back, but so that maybe someday when you're older, if you ever want to find me, I'll be someone worth finding. You don't have to forgive me. You don't have to think about me at all. If hating me helps you heal, then hate me. I've earned it. But if you ever wonder, even for a second, whether I loved you, the answer is yes. I loved you the only way I knew how, which wasn't nearly enough. Meredith will love you better. Let her. Be happy, Cody. Be safe. Be everything I couldn't help you become. Your mother, Darla. Meredith reads the letter twice. Then she sets it down on the table and cries. Not for Darla, not exactly, but for the tragedy of a woman so broken that abandoning her child was the most love she could manage. For the years Cody spent waiting for a mother who was never going to show up. For the terrible, beautiful truth that sometimes letting go is the bravest thing a person can do. When the tears finally stop, she folds the letter carefully and puts it back in the envelope. Someday when Cody is older, she'll give it to him. Let him decide what it means, how to feel about it, whether forgiveness is something he wants to offer. But not now. Now he needs stability, certainty, the knowledge that the people who love him aren't going anywhere. The letter can wait. Down the hall, Nora's voice rises with dramatic flair as she describes a T-Rex hunting its prey. Cody's laughter follows a sound that still startles Meredith every time she hears it. 6 weeks ago, that boy didn't know how to laugh. Now he's learning. The formal adoption hearing is scheduled for the second week of December. It's a formality mostly. The hard legal battles have already been won. Darla's voluntary relinquishment of parental rights, signed and witnessed and filed with the court, removed the last obstacle. All that remains is the official ceremony, the judge's signature, the moment when Cody Brennan legally becomes Cody Callahan. But formalities matter, especially for a child who has learned that adults don't always follow through on their promises. Meredith spends the weeks before the hearing preparing. She converts the guest room into Cody's permanent bedroom, letting him choose the paint color and the bedding and the posters for the walls. He picks blue, the color of the Arizona sky on clear days, and a comforter covered in rocket ships. A poster of Spider-Man goes above the bed. Another poster, smaller, shows a Harley-Davidson motorcycle gleaming in the sunlight. Griffin brought that one. The relationship between Cody and the Hells Angels has evolved into something Meredith never expected. Every Saturday, Griffin picks Cody up on his motorcycle and takes him to the clubhouse, where rough men with scarred hands teach him about engines and loyalty and the difference between the family you're born with and the family you choose. They call him Little Brother. He calls them his uncles. It's unconventional. Meredith's supervisor at CPS has expressed concerns. Her mother, when she heard about it, nearly had a stroke. But Meredith has learned that conventional isn't the same as right, and right isn't always comfortable. These men saw Cody when no one else would look. They stopped when everyone else drove past. They showed up with 500 motorcycles and refused to let a child be invisible. If that's not family, Meredith doesn't know what is. The night before the adoption hearing, Nora comes to Meredith's bedroom. She's in her pajamas, her hair still damp from the bath, her expression serious in the way it gets when she's been thinking about something important. At 10 years old, Nora has her mother's eyes and her father's stubbornness and a wisdom that sometimes seems too heavy for a child to carry. "Mom, can I ask you something?" Meredith sets aside the case file she's been reviewing. "Of course, sweetheart." Nora climbs onto the bed, crossing her legs beneath her. "After tomorrow, Cody's going to be my brother. Like legally. For real." "That's right. And we'll have the same last name and everything. Yes, he'll be Cody Callahan, just like us." Nora is quiet for a moment, picking at a loose thread on the comforter. "When Dad used to hit you," she says slowly, "I always wished I had a brother. Someone who could help me protect you. Someone who understood what it was like." Meredith's heart clenches. They don't talk about Cal often. The restraining order keeps him at a distance, and the divorce settlement keeps him out of their lives. But the scars remain invisible but indelible, shaping who they are and how they see the world. "I know, baby." Cody understands. Nora looks up, her eyes bright. He knows what it's like when the people who are supposed to take care of you don't. He knows what it's like to wait for help that doesn't come. He knows, Sawson. He does. "So I was thinking." Nora straightens, squaring her small shoulders like she's about to deliver an important speech. "I was thinking that I don't want to be his sister because the court says so. I want to be his sister because I choose to, because he's part of our family now, and family means you show up for each other. Always." Meredith pulls her daughter into a hug, blinking back tears. "When did you get so smart? I learned from you." They stay like that for a long moment, mother and daughter holding onto each other in the quiet darkness. Then Nora pulls back with a mischievous grin. "Also, I've always wanted someone to blame when cookies go missing from the jar." Meredith laughs, the sound bright and genuine. "Somehow I don't think Cody's going to be the one stealing cookies." Exactly. That's what makes it perfect. The adoption hearing takes place in the same courtroom where Darla Brennan's parental rights were terminated. But today, the atmosphere is different. Sunlight streams through the tall windows, casting everything in shades of gold. The gallery is packed, not with reporters and officials, but with people who have become part of Cody's new life. Teachers from his school, Mrs. Patterson, the foster mother who cared for him during those uncertain months, a social worker named Donna, who processed the original intake call and has followed the case ever since. And in the back row, filling an entire section, 50 Hells Angels in their leather vests and weathered boots. Griffin sits at the end of the row, his gray beard neatly trimmed for the occasion, his pale blue eyes fixed on the small boy in the front of the courtroom. Cody is wearing a new suit. Meredith bought it last week, navy blue with a clip-on tie that he keeps adjusting nervously. Beside him, Nora holds his hand with the fierce protectiveness of an older sister who has already decided that this boy belongs to her. Judge Margaret Thornton enters and everyone rises. She's seen thousands of cases in her 3 decades on the bench. Custody battles and divorces and the endless parade of human failure that makes up family court. But cases like this, cases where broken things get put back together, where children find homes and families find wholeness, these are the ones she lives for. Please be seated. The formalities proceed quickly. Meredith's lawyer presents the paperwork. The court-appointed advocate confirms that all requirements have been met. A social worker testifies that the home study was completed satisfactorily, that Cody has adjusted well, that the placement is in the best interest of the child. Then Judge Thornton looks at Cody. Young man, I'd like to ask you a few questions. You're not in trouble. I just want to hear from you directly. Is that okay? Cody nods, his grip tightening on Nora's hand. Can you tell me in your own words how you feel about being adopted by Ms. Callahan? The courtroom falls silent. Cody is quiet for a long moment, his brow furrowed in concentration. He's never been good with words. 7 years of learning that his voice didn't matter have left him hesitant, uncertain, always waiting for permission to speak. But today is different. Today people are listening. Before, he says slowly, his voice small but steady, I didn't have anybody. My mom was there, but she wasn't really there. You know, like she was in the house, but she didn't see me. Nobody saw me. He pauses, gathering his thoughts. Then I sat at the school for a long time. 3 days. I thought maybe if I was really quiet and really good, someone would notice. But they just kept walking past, like I was invisible. In the back row, Griffin's jaw tightens. Then the motorcycle men came, and Meredith came, and they saw me. Really saw me. Not just like looked at me and kept going. They stopped. They asked my name. They said I wasn't alone anymore. Cody looks up at Meredith and something in his expression shifts. The wariness that has defined him for so long softens into something that looks almost like peace. Meredith keeps her promises. She said she'd come back the next day, and she did. She said she'd fight for me, and she did. She said I could have a family, and now I do. He gestures at Nora. I have a sister who reads me books about dinosaurs, and I have uncles who teach me about motorcycles. And I have a mom who shows up. His voice cracks slightly on the last word. That's what I always wanted, someone who shows up. And Meredith, she always shows up. The courtroom is utterly still. Judge Thornton removes her glasses and wipes her eyes with a handkerchief she keeps in her robe for moments exactly like this. Thank you, Cody. That was very brave. She replaces her glasses and straightens the papers in front of her. In my 30 years on this bench, I have seen the best and worst of human nature. I have seen parents who would move heaven and earth for their children, and I have seen parents who treated their children as afterthoughts. I have seen communities that rallied around their most vulnerable members, and I have seen communities that looked away. Her gaze sweeps across the courtroom. This case represents both. A community that failed a child and the strangers who refused to let that failure stand. A mother who couldn't be what her son needed and another woman who chose to step into that void. She looks directly at Meredith. Ms. Callahan, you are not required by law to take on this responsibility. You have a demanding career, a daughter of your own, a life that was already full. And yet when you learned that a child was suffering, you didn't look away. You drove 2 hours in the middle of the night. You fought a system that often seems designed to prevent good outcomes. You opened your home and your heart to a boy who had every reason to believe that adults couldn't be trusted. Judge Thornton's voice strengthens. That is what family means, not biology, not paperwork, but the choice made every day to show up for the people who need you. She picks up her pen. It is therefore the ruling of this court that the petition for adoption is granted. From this moment forward, Cody Brennan shall be known as Cody Callahan with all the rights and privileges of a natural-born child. This adoption is final and irrevocable. The gavel comes down. The gallery erupts. 50 Hell's Angels are on their feet, cheering and whistling and stomping their boots against the floor in a thunder of celebration. Teachers are hugging. Social workers are crying. Nora throws her arms around Cody and squeezes so hard he gasps for breath. And Meredith, who has spent 15 years maintaining professional distance from her cases, who has learned the hard way that caring too much is dangerous in her line of work, pulls her son into her arms and holds him like she's never going to let go. "We're family now," Cody whispers against her shoulder. "Real family." "We were always real family," she replies. "Now we just have the paperwork to prove it." The celebration moves from the courthouse to the Rusty Spoke. It's an unlikely venue for a child's adoption party, this roadhouse, with its beer-stained floors and cigarette-scarred tables. But the Hells Angels have closed the place down for the afternoon, and what was once a rough biker bar has been transformed into something almost festive. Balloons in blue and silver float near the ceiling. A banner stretched across the back wall reads, "Welcome home, Cody," in hand-painted letters. A cake shaped like a motorcycle sits on the bar, and someone has hung streamers from the antler chandelier. Cody moves through the crowd like a small prince among his subjects. Every biker wants to shake his hand, ruffle his hair, tell him he's part of the brotherhood now. Dutch Carver presents him with a leather jacket, child-sized, with "Little Brother" embroidered on the back. Dex Cordova gives him a pair of riding goggles and promises that when he's old enough, he'll teach him to handle a bike. Meredith watches from a corner booth, Nora beside her. Both of them slightly overwhelmed by the chaos. Griffin slides into the seat across from them, 2 beers in his hand. He sets one in front of Meredith and keeps the other for himself. "Hell of a day." That's one word for it. They sit in comfortable silence, watching Cody pose for photos with his new uncles. The boy is smiling, really smiling, his whole face transformed by the expression. "He's going to be okay," Griffin says finally, "because of you. Because of a lot of people, you included." Griffin shakes his head slowly. "I just made noise. You did the real work, the hard work, the showing up every day, even when it's exhausting, even when it would be easier to walk away." He takes a long pull from his beer. "That's something I never could do." Meredith hears the weight beneath his words. "Tell me about Danny." The name lands like a stone dropped into still water. Griffin's expression doesn't change, but something behind his eyes shifts, some wall coming down that's been in place for nearly 2 decades. He was 8 years old, same age as Cody now. Blonde hair, brown eyes, smile that could light up a room. Griffin's voice is rough, like he's speaking around broken glass. "His mother and I weren't together anymore. She had custody. I had him every other weekend." He stares at his beer, not drinking. "I was supposed to pick him up on a Friday. Had a run scheduled, club business, but I promised I'd be there by 6. Then the run went sideways. Bad information, wrong place at the wrong time. I had to choose between finishing the buy and keeping my promise." Meredith already knows how this story ends. "I chose the job. Figured I'd call his mother, explain pick him up Saturday instead. Danny would understand. He always understood." Griffin's hand tightens around the bottle. "There was an accident. Friday night, 9:47 p.m. Lisa was driving Danny home from a friend's house. Drunk driver ran a red light, hit them on the passenger side. Griffin. Danny died on impact. Lisa survived. She never spoke to me again. Blamed me. Said if I'd been there like I promised, Danny wouldn't have been in that car." He finally looks up, and Meredith sees the grief that has shaped this man for 18 years. She was right. If I'd kept my promise, my son would still be alive. Instead, I chose the club. I chose the job. I chose everything except the thing that mattered. The noise of the party continues around them, but in their booth, time has stopped. "That's why you stopped," Meredith says quietly, "when you heard about Cody. You couldn't drive past another child who needed someone to show up. I couldn't save Danny. I couldn't undo what I did, but I could make damn sure that kid didn't spend another night alone." Griffin's voice hardens, "Even if it meant bringing 500 brothers down on that town. Even if it meant breaking every rule I ever followed. Some things matter more than rules. You did save him, Griffin, you and your brothers. If you hadn't come, if I hadn't come, you would have found another way. That's the difference between us, Callahan. You don't give up. You don't choose the easy road. You fight for kids who can't fight for themselves, even when the system makes it impossible." He finishes his beer and sets the bottle down with a thunk. "I couldn't be Danny's father the way he needed. I can't be Cody's father either. But you can be his mother. You already are. And that kid, that boy who sat alone for 3 days waiting for someone to give a damn, he's going to grow up knowing what family really means. Because of you. Meredith feels tears threatening again. Griffin, don't. He holds up a hand. I'm not good at this emotional stuff. Just promise me one thing. What? Let me be his uncle. Let the club be his family too. Not instead of you. Never instead of you, but alongside you. We can't give him what you give him, but we can give him something. A place where he belongs. People who always have his back. Meredith looks across the bar at Cody, who is currently being taught a complicated handshake by three bikers who look like they could bench press a truck. I think, she says slowly, that's exactly what he needs. Griffin nods once sharply. Then he slides out of the booth and walks over to Cody, crouching down to the boy's eye level, saying something that makes Cody's face light up like a sunrise. Nora leans against her mother's shoulder. Mom. Yeah, sweetheart. This is the weirdest family ever. Meredith laughs, pulling her daughter close. Yeah, it really is. The Cody laws passed the Arizona state legislature in March. It's a bipartisan bill, one of the few pieces of legislation in recent memory to receive unanimous support from both parties. The provisions are simple but sweeping mandatory reporting requirements for any child not picked up from school within 2 hours. Training programs for teachers and staff on recognizing signs of neglect. Dedicated police units for child welfare checks. Funding for emergency foster care placements. The bill's official title is the Child Safety and Community Responsibility Act of 2024. Everyone calls it the Cody Laws. Governor Williams signs it in a ceremony on the steps of the state capitol. Meredith is there, and Cody and Nora. Griffin stands in the back of the crowd, watching with the quiet satisfaction of someone who has seen justice done. The cameras capture everything. The governor shaking Cody's hand. Meredith speaking briefly about the importance of community vigilance. Nora holding a sign she made herself, "No more invisible kids." What the cameras don't capture is the moment afterward, when the crowds have dispersed and the politicians have retreated to their offices, when a small boy stands on the Capitol steps and looks out at the city spread before him. Do you think it'll help? Cody asks. The law. Meredith considers the question carefully. She's been in this field long enough to know that laws don't solve everything. That bureaucracy can corrupt even the best intentions. That there will always be children who fall through the cracks no matter how many safety nets are put in place. But she also knows that change has to start somewhere. I think it'll help some kids, she says honestly. Maybe not all of them, but some, and that's worth fighting for. Cody nods, slowly processing this. Griffin says that even if you can't save everyone, you have to try, because the ones you do save matter. Griffin's a smart man. He's teaching me about engines. He says when I'm 16, he'll help me build my own motorcycle. Meredith suppresses a shudder at the thought of her son on a motorcycle in 6 years. But she's learned that some battles aren't worth fighting. We'll talk about it when you're 16. That's what you always say. And I'll keep saying it until you're 16. Cody grins, and in that expression, Meredith sees the boy he's becoming. Not the frightened child who sat alone in a parking lot waiting for someone who never came, but a kid who knows he's loved, who knows he belongs, who has learned that family isn't about blood or obligation, but about choice. The choice to show up, the choice to stay, the choice to fight for each other even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. They walk down the Capitol steps together, mother and son, into the warm Arizona afternoon. Spring turns to summer. Cody finishes second grade with decent grades and a newfound confidence that surprises everyone who knew him before. He joins a little league team, not because he's particularly good at baseball, but because Nora convinced him that being bad at something is the first step to being sort of okay at something. He strikes out more than he hits. He drops fly balls that should be easy catches. But every Saturday, he's in the dugout with his team, and every Saturday, at least one Hell's Angel is in the stands cheering like he's playing in the World Series. The nightmares come less frequently now. He still wakes up, sometimes gasping and shaking, convinced he's back on that concrete curb waiting for someone who will never come. But when that happens, Meredith is there, or Nora is there, padding into his room in her bare feet, climbing into bed beside him, and talking about nothing in particular until his breathing slows and his eyes grow heavy. They never make a big deal of it. They just show up. That's what family does. On the anniversary of his rescue, Griffin takes Cody for a ride. They leave early in the morning before the heat becomes oppressive, the big Harley rumbling beneath them as they wind through the desert on roads that seem to stretch forever. Cody wears his leather jacket, the one that says "Little Brother" on the back, and the goggles Dex gave him at the adoption party. They don't talk much. Griffin isn't a man who fills silence with unnecessary words. But the silence between them is comfortable. The silence of two people who understand each other in ways that don't require explanation. They stop at a roadside diner for breakfast. Pancakes and bacon and orange juice that comes in a glass so large, Cody needs both hands to hold it. The waitress knows Griffin knows the club, and she brings extra whipped cream without being asked. "Can I ask you something?" Cody says, chasing a piece of pancake around his plate. "Shoot." "Why did you stop that day at the school? Why didn't you just keep driving like everyone else?" Griffin sets down his coffee cup. He could give a simple answer. Could talk about the anonymous tip about Meredith's phone call, about the club's code of looking out for kids who can't look out for themselves. But Cody deserves more than the simple answer. "I had a son once," Griffin says. "His name was Danny. He died when he was 8 years old." Cody's eyes widen. "What happened?" "I wasn't there when he needed me. I made a choice, and because of that choice, he's gone." The words hang in the air between them, heavy and irreversible. "I can't bring Danny back. Can't undo what I did. But when I heard about you, about a kid sitting alone waiting for someone to give a damn, I knew I couldn't drive past. Couldn't be one of those people who sees a child suffering and decides it's not their problem." Griffin meets Cody's eyes. "You're not Danny. I'm not trying to replace him with you. But saving you, being part of your life, it's given me something I didn't think I deserved anymore. A chance to do better. To be the person Danny needed me to be, even if it's too late for him." Cody is quiet for a long moment. Then he says, "I'm glad you stopped." "Me too, kid. Me too." They finish their breakfast and get back on the road, the desert stretching endless around them, the past behind them, the future wide open ahead. Every Tuesday at 3:15, 50 motorcycles ride past Prescott Elementary. It started as a statement, a reminder to the town that failed Cody Brennan that someone was watching now. Someone cared. But over time, it has become something more. A tradition, a promise, a weekly declaration that the children of Prescott will never be invisible again. The kids love it. They press against the classroom windows when they hear the distant rumble, watching the parade of chrome and leather roll past. Teachers have learned to build a 5-minute break into their afternoon schedules, knowing that no one will be paying attention anyway. The principal, the new one who replaced Kenneth Ashford after his resignation, stands on the front steps every Tuesday and waves. Not because he has to, because he chooses to. 1 year after the adoption, Meredith sits on the back porch of her Phoenix home watching her children play in the yard. Nora is 11 now, all long legs and attitude and fierce protective love for the brother who isn't really her brother but absolutely is. Cody is 8, still small for his age, but growing, always growing, filling out in ways that have nothing to do with physical size. They're arguing about something. Whose turn it is to pick the movie, who ate the last popsicle, the eternal disputes of siblings that mean nothing and everything at the same time. Meredith watches them and feels something she hasn't felt in a long time. Peace, not the absence of problems. There are still difficult days, still moments when Cody's trauma surfaces in unexpected ways. Still battles with bureaucracy and budget cuts in a system that never seems to have enough resources for the children who need them most. But underneath all of that, a foundation of something solid and true. Family. Her phone buzzes with a text from Griffin. "Riding through Phoenix tomorrow. Dinner." She smiles and types back, "Bring burgers. Kids vote for In-N-Out." His response is immediate. "In-N-Out it is. See you at 6. Nora appears at the porch door, breathless and indignant. "Mom, Cody said that dinosaurs could beat motorcycles in a race, and that's obviously wrong because motorcycles have engines and dinosaurs have legs, and legs can't go as fast as engines." Cody pushes past her, equally breathless and equally indignant. "But T-Rexes were like 40 feet tall, and they could run super fast. Griffin said so." Griffin's not a scientist, Cody. Griffin knows everything about everything. That's not even true. Remember when he said he could make spaghetti and it turned into basically soup? Meredith listens to them argue, these two children who found each other through tragedy and have become something neither expected. Brother and sister. Family. How about, she says, cutting through the debate, we ask Griffin tomorrow when he comes for dinner. He can settle the dinosaur versus motorcycle question once and for all. Both children consider this. Fine, Nora says. Fine, Cody agrees. They disappear back into the yard, already bickering about something else. Meredith watches them go, these pieces of her heart running around on legs, and she thinks about the day she got the call about a boy alone in a parking lot. She didn't know then that she was about to become a mother again. Didn't know that the child sitting on that curb would teach her more about love and resilience and the meaning of family than 15 years of social work ever could. Didn't know that sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in tragedy. But she knows now, and as the sun sets over Phoenix, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Meredith Callahan closes her eyes and whispers a prayer of gratitude for second chances, for family, for the strangers who become brothers and the brothers who become family, and for a 7-year-old boy who waited 3 days for someone to see him and who finally found his way home.